So let's talk about the differences between compact and cancellous bone. Compact bone is going to be the outer layer that looks sort of solid and smooth, the ones that we were touching when we were in lab. And cancellous bone is the inner layer. We can't really see this, but it's spongy and it's a great matrix to hold material like blood and things like that. But also, because it's not solid, it's really designed to make bones lighter. If this was all solid, your skull would weigh so much, but by having most of it sort of hollow in these ranges like this, in the spongy areas, it makes it much, much lighter. The features of the compact bone, there are going to be different areas that we kind of have to know and maybe even label for an exam, but an osteon is going to be the basic structural unit of the osteon tissue, so it's going to be the bone itself. The central canal is in the middle, and this is going to be an area where blood vessels and nerves can come through. The lamina is going to be these cylindrical layers of matrix that surround the central canal, so you can see this round layer, and then you can almost see another round layer right over here. We'll see some better pictures in a minute. And then we have some perforatic canals, and what these do, we'll see a better picture of these in a minute too. They basically connect these canals all together. So here's one, and there'll be a little tunnel that'll sort of link these two together so blood vessels and nerves can still be sort of attached. So let's look at an osteon itself, those cylindrical layers. And if we were to look at one, we'd notice a couple of things are going on. Number one, that we know that bone is made up of collagen and minerals. Well, you'll notice that we have 1, 2, 3 of these circles, and there could even be a fourth or fifth one. And they're going in different directions. So the collagen in this one's going in one direction, the collagen in the inner one is going in another direction, and then finally this one is going to go in one direction as well. And the reason they're not all going in the same direction is because that would give it less strength. So by having them go in different directions and different layers, it actually adds to our strength, but it also gives us a little bit of twisting force. So that means our bones could take a little bit of torque. If they all went in the same directions, our bones, if there was a little twist on them or a little torque on them, would actually shatter. But by having these things overlap in different directions, it actually gives it strength and allows us to be able to twist our bones just a little bit. So the features, now that you can actually see a little better picture of an osteon, you can see that number one, there's the central canal. This is where those arteries and veins are going in. There's the osteon itself, so you could see one of these circles, then you could see another one and another one, and if we continued another one, and they'd be all around to sort of form that bone. And then we have these perforations, which is basically these little canals that go from one to another of these osteons, and it's basically designed to get blood to go through them and nerve endings to go through them. And then we talked about different types of bones. Cancellous is basically the spongy bone. It's what we call trabecular bone, and you could see that it is, if you blow it up, it has a lot of holes in it, and the spaces for red bone marrow. As we find people get older, we'll find that they have less trabecular bone, and as they're much, much younger, they'll have a lot more. With osteoporosis, one of the scans that we're looking for is the amount of trabecular bone that they have inside their bones, and that is an indication of bone density, and it's also an indication of bone stress, thickness and stress. Can it take some stress? Because if it didn't have this inner matrix, we'll start to have breaks. The other thing that this contains is red bone marrow. And remember, red bone marrow is where we're going to go ahead and produce red blood cells and white blood cells. We categorize bones in different groups based off of their shape. We have long bones, they're going to be the femur, the thigh bone, even the fingers sort of fall in this one. We have irregular bones, kind of like our pelvis. The sphenoid bone is probably the most irregular bone you could think of. We have short bones. These are going to be the carpals. Then we have flat bones. These are going to be mostly in our skull. But let's go over these and how they're a little different from each other. Long bones, they're longer as they are wider, so they're much, much longer. They're very narrow. They basically are made up of a couple of bones that we know of. The humerus, the radius, the ulna, the femur, tibia, fibula, and then the phalanges in the fingers and toes. The general anatomy of when we're looking at a bone, especially these long bones, are going to be a couple of things. The shaft itself, in lab we were just calling it the shaft, but its actual name is diaphysis, and it contains this cavity that's lined with the endosteum. And then finally we have the ends, which is called the epiphyse. And that's basically the large ends, and they're covered with different layers of compact bone to give them strength and let them move around. The remainder of the bone is just that periosteum. So we have little areas of the endosteum, and then the periosteum is going to be on the inside. Short bones, they're going to be cube-shaped. They're carpals, tarsals, in the wrist. They are going to be short. Flat bones, these are going to be thin, they can be curvy. These are going to be most of the skull bones. Ribs, we actually call them flat bones as well. Scapula, sternum, they're going to be thin, flattened, sometimes curvy, like I said. The anatomy of a flat bone is they're going to be external and internal surfaces that are composed of the compact bone, that thick layer. The middle layer is going to be spongy, and it's designed again for lightweight, but it's going to be much smaller than we would have in a long bone. Irregular bones don't fit into any of those categories. What you can put into that one would be the sphenoid, vertebrae, just odd-looking bones that sort of have their own thing going on. Bones in the pelvis would add this to this, the sphenoid, the ethnoid. And then in our next video, we'll cover what's in bone and what bone marrow